So the car community as a whole is very focused on their modifications, especially as far as aesthetic modifications go. And one of the definitive ways to change how your car looks is to purchase a body kit for it. And in today's video, we'll be doing something a little different. And instead of discussing with some pictures overlaid and maybe a funny edit or two, I'll be doing a more straightforward approach. And I've made a tier list to demonstrate which body kits are the best and which ones you should avoid like they're some sort of toxic flu. And here is the tier list that I was talking about for those body kits. And for the top tier, we'll have legendary level body kits, so ones that are made by companies and are just ubiquitous in space. Then we'll have pretty good, decent, meh, trash, and then of course Mensuri, which is the bottom tier, and it's for the most tasteless one. And we'll be ranking it based off the brand and not just the individual kit. So it'll be based off of everything that the company has made, to my knowledge. And then we might as well just get right into it. And so our first body kit manufacturer, which isn't really a manufacturer of body kits so much as a tuning shop, is Brabus. And I would say that they're decent. There we go. Because, you know, they're kind of nice. Like, a few of their Mercedes sedans I quite like, and I like how they make them a little more aggressive. But I'm not necessarily too sure if I like their G-Wagon. It just seems to have a little bit too much going on. And I'm also not a big fan of the absolutely massive wheels that they put on their cars. Because all of their cars have like 800 horsepower. All of their cars could pretty much tow a whole building, which is not really true, but like they've got a whole lot of power. And if you have some little massive 21-inch wheels on there that like looks like something you'd see in Miami on a Friday night, that doesn't really mix with crazy amounts of power. And that's why I would have to put them in decent. And the next one is maybe going to be a little bit of a hot take, especially with after I just said some of the Brabus cars have a little too much going on. And that is, I don't really know how to say it, Abflug. And it's a Japanese company, and they were more of a 90s deal, and they had some absolutely crazy looking stuff. And if you would have asked me what I thought maybe a year ago, I would be like, Mansory level. But now I feel like that 90s stuff's kind of making a little bit of a resurgence. So I would say decent as well. Just I haven't seen as much of their stuff as I have Brabus, so I can't really make too much of a judgment. But I don't know. I kind of like the crazy body kits that you could get on a Supra or something like that. And we're going to see this as kind of a theme a little bit going on, and I feel like they do this better than a lot of the other companies that do it. And next up is, of course, I feel like the body kit company. Like, they were one of the people that really started doing it, and they're the ones that just took it to crazy levels. And they build complete cars too, just like Brabus, but it's a slightly different deal. They don't really do production. They do more one-offs. And of course, that would be Liberty Walk. And again, they have some things that I feel like are a little bland, a little played out. Like, a lot of their kind of over fenders on supercars looks like that was neat back in 2018 or whenever. But now I feel like it's played out a little bit, and they sell some exuberantly expensive kits. Like, you could buy I think it's even $300,000. It's almost as much as a Lamborghini Aventador, the body kit that they sell for the Lamborghini Aventador. And I think that's a bit much. Like, if you're spending more money on a body kit for your Lamborghini than you would on a nice second house in Waco, Texas, I don't really know if that's really worth it. But also at the same time, if you've got like Rockefeller levels of money, or really if that's just what you want to spend money on, I think it's kind of a cool thing to you buy and set yourself apart with. And not to mention the influence they've had as far as the Japanese styling on supercars, which has become really big in the past few years. So that's why I would, whoops, there goes my trackpad. I don't have a mouse yet, so we're working on that. Real fast, we'll get a mouse real soon. But that's why I have to say they'll be in legendary, just based off of the impact and then some of their styling as well. Oh, actually, I'm going to save this one for a little bit. Or we'll have to, I've got to think of my jokes for this one. Because, all right, so next up, that's Liberty Walk again. Whoops, didn't mean that. Okay, we're going to forget about that. this one, I forget what it was, but I think it's called Haman, and they do more Brabus sort of stuff, but instead of for Mercedes-Benzes, it's mostly BMWs. And again, I think it's the same deal as Brabus, where they'll do a little bit of carbon fiber, they'll do, stuff here and there, but they won't go too crazy. I just don't think they do it as well as Brabus. And again, massive, super heavy wheels on a performance car, I just think is generally a bad idea. Because if you're riding around on some like little crazy 23-inch Ford Giottos, and you punch it off the line, you're gonna get and it'll ride like an ox cart, and that's not really something you want in an 800 horsepower BMW. Like, you know what I mean? So that's why I have to say meh. Like, they do the same stuff as Brabus, they just don't do it quite as well, in my opinion. And the next one is Pandem. And Pandem I've had a very mixed relationship with, just like Liberty Walk. And I think that a lot of the stuff they do is pretty played out by now. Like, their kind of earlier cars, like, again, the bolt-on over fenders look, I don't really like anymore, except for a few cases. And Pandem has pretty much made all their money off those bolt-on over fenders. So, if we were just going off that, I would say decent, because if it was just based off their look, I'd say meh or trash. But I don't hate it that much. And again, I have to acknowledge at least some of the influence they've had. But I've seen their newer offerings for, like, those American muscle cars and, like, the old American muscle cars. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's something cool. Because they're doing, like, some more race car inspired stuff, which I guess their earlier things were, but it was more like, oh, yeah, look, this is something I can, show my friends on Facebook. Like, hey, you're not going to believe this. Look at me. I got some plastic over fenders and on my BRZ. I'm a real baller now. I spent enough money to buy a pretty much a Mercedes-Benz, but that's on my BRZ, so this is how I'm special. And but now it's like, oh shoot, wait, they're doing some creative stuff, and it's like not for the brand new cars, which is kind of cool to see them like going back into like the back catalogs of like Mustangs from the 2000s, Corvettes from the 2000s, being like, oh hey, look, these are getting a little popular, but we can give them that push, and they're a great like platform to make a product for. And that's why I'm gonna say they're pretty good. Just, I don't think that they have exactly the reputation that Liberty Walk does, especially with Liberty Walk's like one-off builds. So that's why I would say pretty good as opposed to legendary. But I would say that they're probably right on the edge of legendary. This next one is Feed, and they're a tuner. I think it could be completely getting the name wrong because it's some Japanese thing and I'm not Japanese, so. But they're a tuner of RX-7s, and the RX-7 is, of course, one of my favorite cars. And so there will be a little tiny bit of bias, but they also do body kits and stuff of that nature. And I'm not a big body kit fan, especially on the RX-7, but what they do is pretty good, and it's got the race car aesthetic that I really like. I get all weak in the knees when I see a race car inspired or race car body kit that is pulled off well. And that's what they do. And if I was to build a kind of fancier track car RX-7 that needs, them wide tires, I'd probably do a Feed body kit. And that's why I would say, again, they're in the legendary tier. And our next one is, again, the kind of race car inspired theme, which would be Varus. And Varus is another one of those really solid body kit options that you could get from Japan. And they do everything handmade, and there was like a Larry Chen video on this Supra that I used as the stock image or whatever. And like the attention to detail is really cool, and I like how it flows with the lines. And even though this has like those bolted on over fenders, it's not nearly as obvious as the Pandem one. So I would say that this Supra is my favorite kit from them, but they also do some really cool stuff for the Evo, and also like Civics, and even the Volkswagen Golf R. And that's why I would say, again, they're pretty good, because it's that classic Japanese styling that is honestly kind of timeless as far as like, I guess, tuner cars go. And of course, if this is gonna be pretty much as good as the list gets, with like 2 or 3 solid ones in a row, we've got to come back to down to earth a little bit. And this isn't even taking us down to earth, this is like taking us to the mantle. This is the worst of the worst, the dog water of the dog water, the prime dumpster juice, and that would be Mansory. And I know you've seen the memes. Like, if you follow Worst Spec on Instagram, like, they literally have a whole day of the week dedicated to the crimes against humanity that Mansory commits. And I know I've talked trash about Mansory in a video or two in the past, especially that one where I was talking about Kim Kardashian's car collection. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is very, very bad stuff. And I don't think I've stated exactly how bad, because their Urus kit is like, it's hard on the eyes. Like, I am already very blind. I need contacts, but I feel like I must get my prescription updated every time I look at one of these Uruses. And that's not even the worst one. Like, I kind of like how the Aston Martin SUV looks. It's not my favorite, but they destroyed it. They put like 15 wings on the back of it. It's literally something you'd see like driving out of an AutoZone, like driven by someone that looks like I do, to be honest. But they've got like, oh yeah, big downforce. Look at the 3M tape on wings. Good stuff, those. And that's why I have to say that they're so bad, they don't even belong in trash. They just get their own tier. And the next one is Veilside. And Veilside's a very interesting maker of body kits. Because if I'm gonna be cynical, I would say they're like a Japanese Mansuri. As in, all joking aside, Mansuri is so bad because they just cobble random stuff together. Like, they put that little, marble countertop fiber on their cars, and like too much of it, but then it kind of clashes with certain other styling elements, and it's just not good. But Veilside kind of does the same thing, if I'm being honest. And they've made some very, very questionable looking cars. And they did I think it's a body kit for the Toyota Supra, the old one, the Mark IV, and it had like some weird Bentley looking front fascia. And I was trying to do this video with a friend a few months ago, and we looked at it and it was like, oh, what's this? Is this a Supra? No, I mean, it can't be. It's got the Bentley front end. No, it's a Supra. And like, they switched up the Mark IV Supra, which is honestly, I think, a pretty good looking car, especially if you do like some real subtle stuff to it. But they turned it into some weird looking conglomeration of many things. And the only thing that carries is the few well-executed Veilside RX-7s and the movie lore. And then their newer kits for the Supras and the Zs aren't bad, but generally I have to put them kind of in the trash category, just because of how inconsistent they've been. The best of the supercar body kit companies, I would say, other than maybe Liberty Walk, would be Vorsteiner. And they do some real subtle stuff. Like, they don't really sell over fenders or anything of that sort, but they do like sell some replacement parts for factory stuff, and like wings and front fascias and all that. It's expensive stuff. Like, I think it's like their bumpers are like $9,000, but they're full carbon and it's good quality. And Vorsteiner possesses a rare ability of, for the most part, being able to make ugly cars from the factory look halfway decent. And if we're gonna talk about that, there's no better example than the BMW M4. And when the BMW M4 came out, I was like, oh shoot, how could BMW, the same company, mind you, that made that 3.0 CSL car, pretty much one of the best looking German cars of all time, in my opinion, how could they build something that looks like a beaver? And that's what the car looks like. The BMW M4 without a replacement bumper kind of looks like a beaver. And it's proportioned weird and all of that. And the M3 looks better because of the proportions kind of balance out, I guess. And I think I've talked about this in like one of my really old videos that I wouldn't suggest watching. But Vorsteiner put a little carbon fiber bar in, and I think there may be better options out there for this car, but it looks really good. And their stuff for the Huracan and the Audi R8 look even better. Like, I would say that takes already pretty good looking cars and makes them like, yeah, I want one of those. So I would say that they're in the pretty good category, because they're not quite as, legendary as Liberty Walk and Feed, but, I would most definitely buy a car with a Vorsteiner lip or wing. And I think we've saved the worst for last. And this wasn't actually something I knew about until about a week or two ago. And on the comments of that celebrity car video, someone said, look at this, Mansory may be bad, but have you ever checked out the it's not Kehlani, that's the singer. No, it's Kevani, I think. Have you ever checked out the Kevani Urus? And I was like, okay, well, I'm scared. I'm scared because if anything's worse than Mansory, I don't really want to see it, and I'm not sure that I'll be able to see after I see it. I should have been very secretive about this, because what I looked up was it was bad. If like someone discovers this in my like search history, it's curtains. You're never hearing from me again, because this is the ugliest thing I've seen in a very long time. And if you know me personally, which nobody really does, I'm a secretive guy, but if you know me, I talk about the Pontiac Aztec as if it's the worst thing to ever happen to humankind. And I would say this is worse, because it's just as ugly as that, but it costs $1 bajillion. So this is Mansory tier ugliness is worse than Mansory, which I never thought I would say. Like, when I made this, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to be real funny, we're going to be cheeky, and put Mansory in its own tier. But it's not in its own tier, because someone has found a way to make the long-suffering Lamborghini Urus even uglier than it already was. So, I don't know how that's possible. Like, they've got to be like Tony Stark or something to do that. You've got to be an actual superhero to be able to make the Urus uglier than Mansory did. But somehow it happened. And then they do the same thing to Ferraris and like other good-looking cars, not even like the kind of dowdy or whatever Lamborghini Urus. So, I don't know. It's bad. Bad. Like, it looks like it's got those like little black over fender things. It looks like a cheaply done Nissan S14. Not a $300,000 supercar with probably another $200,000 of mods on top of that. So, I don't know. And I know this is not anywhere near a definitive list of body kit makers, and I'm already kind of thinking about doing a part 2, because this was just such a hoot. So, if you got anything, suggest it in the comments.